A lot of the problems that we have in the world were brought on by the way in which humans are so good at producing stupidity. So that schools are very good at it, but they have competition from media, from society, and unless we get people smart in ways that they can protect themselves and their societies, then meetings like this are really pointless. Now, as we want to talk about what the role of digital technology can be in this stuff, we have made, in the United States, a massive mistake. We have pretended that there was never a technology called books and that we had learned anything about it. Right? So we had decades of research on how books, they are a technology, work, how children learn them for success in school or do not. We know very well how to teach literacy so that we produce gaps between rich and poor people. Right? We can do that very easily. We've done it. We don't want to do it, but we've done it. And now with this new technology, despite the fact we use the word literacy for it, we've forgotten all of that message. Now, in the movement that I was part of in literacy called the New Literacy Studies, it had one message, that if you want to study literacy, don't look at literacy. And the message of the application of that to technology should be that if you want to study technology, do not look at technology first. Why was it such a fruitful thing to say, let's not look at literacy if we want to study literacy? And that's because literacy and technologies are embedded in social practices. People acquire them in practices with other people, people who have inherited them historically and who set social conventions for them. And without participation in those practices, then you are not adept at that literacy or that technology. Right? And so the technology is simply a part of practices. And you come to understand the practices of the technology or the books when you understand the practices. The second moral of the New Literacy Studies is when you take that approach, you found out that your technology, whether it is books or digital media, has no effects at all outside the practice. And in some practices, it has evil effects. And in some practices, it has good effects. And in some practices, it has none. So that when we detach books and technology from practices, we create this immediate debate, are video games good or are video games bad? A stupid, stupid, stupid question. Now, as this goes to school, the moral of this is that when you go to school with a technology, the key thing for you is the worst technology for schooling that ever created, this is an evidence thing, it's not a value statement, is the textbook. In brilliant research, Art Gracer at the University of Memphis has shown that if you're trying to teach something like algebra, and you pit a whole bunch of conditions together, you have an artificial tutor and a human teacher, and you have some other stuff going on, and then you have kids reading a textbook, and then just to be as scientific as you can, you have a control group where they do nothing. They just do nothing. They stare up into space. The textbook does not beat the nothing condition. See, that's a pretty bad thing when your educational technology is less good than nothing. We don't want to do that again. And so when you want to ask about a game or any other technology, don't do it. Ask, what do I want people to learn? And how do I want them to learn? What is the participatory structure? What are the outcomes? What sorts of people do I want to make them? Do I want them able to live in the age of Armageddon or not? What do I want, and how do they participate? Then say, of all the tools available to me, including books, augmented reality, games, artificial agents, all of them, what are they good for in this setting, and how do I network them together? See, in America, we have a big movement, let's teach everything through games. And if we invent something tomorrow, it'll be, let's teach everything through that. That's the textbook mentality. Now, one of the mistakes we made on literacy that we will make again in technology unless we're careful is that there are two ways to learn to read, one of which is unsuccessful, so you pass reading tests, and one of which is successful. People, and we know this from lots of research in cognitive science, people know what a word means in a text if they can assign an image to it, or an action, or an experience, or a practice that's been part of it. If all they can assign to that word is a definition or other words, then they have verbal meanings, but they don't have embodied meanings. And we know that when humans have embodied meanings, they're smart. By the way, they can't fail tests, can't fail to comprehend a text for which you have embodied meanings. But if they have verbal meanings, they can only pass paper and pencil tests. Now, what happens in American schools is the rich kids come to school with embodied meanings, and the poor kids with verbal meanings, and we give them the same tests and say, like, how stupid those guys are. Now, I could run through you the decades of research that have done that, but I don't need to do that because you can do this to yourself. Go home, if you have not played video games, and pick up a video game and take the manual, if you can even find it anymore, and read it and see if it teaches you to play the game. You will first of all, you won't understand the manual. Second of all, when you open the game, you're going to say, what in the hell did that manual have to do with this? And it certainly doesn't help me play it at all. Then just play. Play as horribly as you want, and then open the manual again, and it will be completely clear. Completely lucid. Because you have now, from the game, an image, an action, experiences, and deeds you've done, tied to every word in the book. In other words, you have lived in the world the language is about. Now that's the same if you're going to do biology, algebra, physics. If you have lived in the world that it's about, and you have images and actions and practices with other people to associate with those words, then it is easy language, it is non-technical language, and if you don't, it is hard language and technical language. The only way you can create a bell curve in school is to be sure you did not give everybody situated meanings. Now, as I've said, we didn't learn a lot from what we did with books as we moved on to other technology, but we certainly have learned, and a lot of people have pushed, that people have to, if it's embodied meanings, they have to participate in the community of people that share those meanings, right? They're practices. If you want to be a physicist, and the words of physics are given to you by the things physicists do, then you got to do it with them, right? However, digital media has upped the ante in this regard massively because we exist today with an international maker movement. That it is easier today for everyday people with no credentials, whether you're 7 or 70, to make anything you want if you pay the learning curve, right? There are kids that are absolute experts on digital movies, digital maybe, they make their own games, citizen science. For example, in the Fab movement, there are 3 ways to print a house. There's a way to print a liver. And now there's a technology on Kickstarter that's already been shown, which is called a lab on a chip, that goes to a set of digital tools that are extractors, printers, adders, and you will, by simply pushing the computer, anybody would be able to build anything. 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 It's going to change. There's no, by the way, all of the low-cost advantage of China is gone when this happens, right? The world's going to be very different. Now, what I always think about as an old man when this maker movement comes on and we have 12-year-olds who are capable of doing PhD work, is we literacy people couldn't even get everybody to write. That was the maker movement in literacy. And while we've had some societies with universal literacy, still to this day we have none with universal writing. Now we're going to sit around saying, how are we going to get everybody to universally be in the maker movement when that's what's really going to be the future? Hopefully we won't screw up our last thing. Now, this maker movement stuff has gone to, it's pushed forward into a thing called collective intelligence. That is, making tools that network everyday people, not experts, in ways that draw out the unique knowledge each one has and then builds on it with everybody else so that you can make discoveries on hard problems. That is, ones that you don't know the answer to, ones that would speak to Armageddon. And this is a major movement. There are all sorts of examples. It has done remarkable thing. Let me just give you one example. The game Fold It, very widely known, where players fold proteins. As you know, a protein can fold into billions upon billions upon billions of shapes, and only one of them counts for the effects it has on you. So scientists use massive supercomputers, and then gamers use a very massive supercomputer, this one, and they just do pattern recognition. And 2 years ago, they discovered the protein that causes AIDS that had eluded science for 20 years. And in the last contest with scientists, they took 7 of the 10 slots, and they do not have credentials. They are part of a larger thing of way that these people in the maker movement, the fab movement, collective intelligence movement, they don't learn these skills in school. They learn them in what Betty and I have called affinity spaces. Affinity spaces are all over the internet, and they're organized in a way that is entirely, massively different from school. They're not age-graded, 7 to 70. Experts and newbies are together. They're driven by interest and passion, not by race, class, gender, or anything else. Mentorship and leadership is flexible. Some days you mentor, some days you don't. They have distributed knowledge and dispersed knowledge, and they also customize. When you want help, they customize it. You can get a tutorial, a didactic one. You can do it any way you want. Notice it's a live interwork of very complex relationships among people that stores knowledge in a very, very modern way, and has allowed people, if they want to put in a learning curve, to make much further progress, a lot in a PhD when they could be 12. Now, I just close with this. All of this future, it isn't future, it's all here, it's just not at school, is changing the nature of assessment wildly, because with media and with participation, we can collect copious data. And we can collect it over long periods of time, and we can compare it to millions of other people. So that means assessment now should not be based on a drop out of the sky test taken on Tuesday. It should be based on thousands of observations on hundreds of variables compared across long periods of time that exposes trajectories of growth. We know that people develop in different ways, and it's often U-shaped. They get good, they get bad. God forbid you take the test the day you're bad. But now we'll be able to say, look, here's the pattern this guy's going on. Looks great. Or, looks great, but there's another even more innovative pattern. Maybe you want to try these solutions. Now, this thing of talking about assessment as growth across time, trajectories to masses, multiple variables, thousands of pieces of data compared to millions of players, is done every day in the game industry. If you play Halo, you can do this tomorrow. You can get beautiful representations of that data. And yet we are a society, in the United States at least, in which you'll still get a score on Tuesday that has no relevance whatsoever to what you did, but also no relevance to Armageddon.